The events of June 12, 2025 have left an indelible mark on the global aviation community and the hearts of millions. On that day, Air India Flight AI-171, a Boeing 787-8 Dreamliner, embarked on its journey from Ahmedabad to London, but its flight was tragically cut short just moments after takeoff. The catastrophic crash, which claimed the lives of all but one of the 242 people on board and several individuals on the ground, has raised urgent and profound questions. In the immediate aftermath, a grainy piece of CCTV footage emerged, offering the public its first haunting glimpse into the aircraft's final struggle. This video, though far from definitive, provides critical clues that allow us, as aviation professionals, to begin piecing together a preliminary understanding of what may have gone wrong in those crucial seconds. My purpose here is not to speculate without basis or to assign premature blame, but to use my experience as a pilot to walk you through what we are seeing and what it might mean. Aviation safety is built upon a foundation of learning from every incident, no matter how painful. By carefully examining the available evidence, we can start to frame the right questions for the investigators. The CCTV footage shows an aircraft behaving in a way that is profoundly abnormal, struggling to achieve the very essence of flight. It is a silent witness to a crew grappling with a severe and rapidly unfolding emergency, and understanding their potential actions and the aircraft's response is the first step toward honoring the victims by seeking the truth. As we embark on this analysis, it is essential to remember the human element at the center of this tragedy. Every seat on that aircraft was occupied by a person with a story, a family, and a future. The pilots in the cockpit were highly trained professionals who, in their final moments, were fighting to save every life entrusted to their care. The initial analysis of the video points toward a severe lack of aircraft performance, a fundamental inability to climb as designed. This could stem from a number of potential causes, from incorrect configuration to a catastrophic systems failure, and our task is to explore these possibilities in a clear and understandable way, free from technical jargon. Over the next several sections, we will deconstruct what we see in the footage and what certain pilot actions might indicate. We will explore the role of critical flight controls like flaps, the significance of the landing gear remaining down, and the potential deployment of emergency systems. We will also discuss the inherent limitations of analyzing low-quality video and emphasize the paramount importance of the data that will be recovered from the aircraft's black boxes. This is a journey to understand, not to judge. It is a process that requires patience, discipline, and a deep respect for the complexities of flight and the ongoing work of the official investigation team. To understand what went wrong with Flight AI-171, we must first appreciate what a normal takeoff looks like. A modern jetliner, when correctly configured and with all systems operating properly, accelerates down the runway with immense power. At a calculated speed, the nose lifts and the aircraft climbs away from the ground at a steep, confident angle. It is a symphony of power and aerodynamics, practiced thousands of times a day around the world. The aircraft quickly gains altitude and speed, retracts its landing gear to become more streamlined, and establishes a safe, positive rate of climb. This initial ascent is one of the most critical phases of flight, where the aircraft transitions from a ground vehicle to an airborne one, and there is little margin for error. What we witness in the CCTV footage from Ahmedabad is the complete opposite of this controlled, powerful ascent. The Dreamliner is seen using the entire length of the runway, a clear and immediate red flag. Aircraft are certified to take off with significant runway to spare, providing a safety buffer. Lifting off at the very end indicates the aircraft was not generating enough lift or thrust to become airborne at the expected point. Instead of climbing decisively, it appears to hover just above the ground, struggling to gain any meaningful altitude. This is a classic sign of a severe performance deficiency. The aircraft is flying, but only barely, in a state of extreme vulnerability. This low-altitude struggle immediately tells a pilot that something is fundamentally wrong. The aircraft is not performing as predicted. The energy state, a combination of altitude and speed, is critically low. In this condition, the pilots would be facing a cascade of warnings and a situation that deviates dangerously from their training and expectations. the aircraft's inability to climb away from the airport and its surrounding obstacles puts it in immediate peril. The crew would have instantly recognized this as a life-threatening emergency, a scenario where their training, skill, and calm under pressure would be tested to the absolute limit in a matter of seconds. The visual evidence of the aircraft laboring so intensely, so close to the ground, points to one of two primary scenarios or a combination thereof. The first possibility is a significant loss of engine thrust, meaning the power plants were not delivering the required force to propel the aircraft forward and upward. The second, and perhaps more likely given the visual cues, is a problem with the aircraft's aerodynamic configuration. This means the wings were not properly set up to generate the necessary amount of lift for a takeoff at that weight and speed. Either of these situations would create the desperate struggle for flight that the video so tragically captures. To grasp why the Air India 787 may have struggled so profoundly, we need to talk about one of the most essential components for takeoff: the flaps. Imagine a wing as a flat plane. It generates lift by having air move faster over its curved top surface than its flatter bottom surface. Flaps are movable panels on the trailing edge of the wings that the pilots extend for takeoff and landing. When extended, they increase the wing's surface area and, more importantly, its curvature, or camber. This change in shape allows the wing to generate much more lift at lower speeds. Think of it as giving the wing extra grabbing power on the air, which is essential to lift a heavy, fuel-laden aircraft off the ground. Without the proper flap setting, a takeoff can become impossible. The aircraft's computers calculate the precise speed at which it needs to lift off, the rotation speed, based on its weight, the runway length, and the assumption that the flaps are correctly set. If the crew were to attempt to take off without deploying the flaps, the wings would not generate enough lift at that calculated speed. The aircraft would continue to accelerate down the runway, far past its intended liftoff point, unable to fly. The pilots would feel the controls feel heavy or unresponsive, as the aircraft simply would not want to leave the ground. This scenario matches the visual evidence of the aircraft using the entire runway. A critical question then is how such a mistake could happen. Modern airliners like the 787 are equipped with sophisticated warning systems designed specifically to prevent this error. A takeoff configuration warning system cross-checks the position of the flaps, speed brakes, and other controls when the throttles are advanced for takeoff. If the flaps are not in the correct takeoff position, a loud horn or oral warning like flaps should sound in the cockpit, alerting the crew before the aircraft gathers too much speed. For the aircraft to have proceeded down the runway without the proper flap setting suggests a potential breakdown in this safety net. Either a technical failure of the warning system itself or, less likely, a complex human factors scenario where the crew missed or misinterpreted the alert. The implications of an incorrect flap setting are severe. If the aircraft does manage to become airborne, as seems to have happened here, it would be in a precarious aerodynamic state. It would be flying much closer to its stall speed, the speed below which the wings can no longer produce enough lift to support the aircraft's weight, causing it to fall. The pilots would be wrestling with an airplane that does not want to climb and is dangerously close to losing flight altogether. This situation would require immediate and precise corrective action, but at such a low altitude, the time and space available to recover would be virtually non-existent, creating a scenario of almost certain disaster. Another significant clue visible in the footage is that the aircraft's landing gear remains down after it lifts off the runway. In a normal takeoff sequence, one of the first actions a pilot takes after establishing a positive rate of climb is to raise the landing gear. This is done to clean up the aircraft aerodynamically. The extended gear creates a tremendous amount of drag, like holding a large parachute behind the plane. Retracting it makes the aircraft more streamlined, allowing it to accelerate and climb more efficiently. The fact that the gear on Flight AI-171 was not retracted is not an oversight. It is almost certainly a deliberate decision by the flight crew, and it speaks volumes about the emergency they were facing. When a flight crew is confronted with a severe performance issue on takeoff, such as an engine failure or the inability to climb as discussed, they revert to specific emergency procedures. One of these procedures often calls for leaving the landing gear down. The logic is straightforward. If the aircraft cannot climb properly, the immediate priority shifts from continuing the flight to preparing for a potential emergency landing. The crew knows that whatever is wrong, they may have to put the plane back on the ground very soon. Leaving the gear extended saves precious seconds and eliminates the risk of being unable to lower it again if a hydraulic or electrical system fails. This decision is a clear indicator that the pilots were aware they were in deep trouble. From the moment the aircraft struggled to lift off, their minds would have been racing through emergency checklists. The captain, upon seeing the poor climb performance, would have likely commanded, "Do not raise the gear." This action preserves the option for an immediate landing on any available surface, whether that is the remaining runway ahead or, in a more desperate scenario, an off-airport landing. It is a trade-off. You accept the significant performance penalty of the drag from the gear in exchange for being prepared for the worst-case scenario of an imminent landing. The extended gear, therefore, transforms our understanding of the event. It tells us this was not a situation where the pilots were unaware of a problem. On the contrary, it shows they were actively fighting the problem and taking procedural steps to manage the emergency. They recognized that their aircraft was not capable of a normal climb, and that their mission had changed from flying to London to simply trying to keep the aircraft in the air long enough to find a safe place to land. This deliberate procedural action, visible even in the grainy video, is a testament to a crew trying to manage an overwhelming crisis in real time. While the focus has been on the lack of climb performance, some analysts have pointed to another subtle, though unconfirmed detail in the video, the possible deployment of the ram air turbine, or RAT. The RAT is a small propeller-driven generator that is stowed within the aircraft's fuselage or wing root. In the event of a catastrophic failure of the main electrical or hydraulic systems, typically caused by the failure of both engines, the RAT automatically deploys into the airstream. The windmilling propeller drives a small generator and a hydraulic pump, providing just enough essential power to control the aircraft and operate key flight instruments. It is, a last resort system, the aircraft's final lifeline. If the RAT did deploy on Flight AI-171, it would signify a far more severe and complex emergency than just an incorrect flap configuration. The deployment of the RAT points toward a near-total loss of power. The Boeing 787 is an advanced, more electric aircraft, meaning many of its systems, including flight controls and landing gear, rely heavily on electrical power generated by the engines. A loss of both engines would cripple the aircraft, leaving the pilots with a heavy, unpowered glider. The RAT provides the bare minimum power needed to keep control surfaces movable, allowing the pilots to fly the aircraft to a landing, much like I did with US Airways Flight 1549. The sound associated with a RAT deployment is also distinctive, a loud buzzing or whirring noise that would be clearly audible to passengers and, most likely, to the cockpit voice recorder. The sole survivor's report of hearing a loud noise about 30 seconds after takeoff could potentially be consistent with the RAT deploying, although it could also be related to an engine failure or some other structural issue. Confirming whether the RAT deployed will be a top priority for investigators examining the wreckage and the flight data recorder, as it would fundamentally change the nature of the investigation, shifting focus from a takeoff configuration error to a dual engine failure or a massive electrical system collapse. An event that would cause both engines to fail simultaneously on takeoff is exceedingly rare. Such a failure could be caused by a common external factor, like a major bird strike involving both engines, a fuel contamination issue, or a catastrophic internal failure that, cascades across the aircraft systems. The deployment of the RAT would indicate that the pilots were not just dealing with poor performance, they were dealing with a near-complete loss of the aircraft's heart and soul, its engines, and the power they provide. This would represent one of the most dire emergencies a flight crew can face, especially at such a low altitude where time to diagnose and react is measured in mere seconds. While the CCTV footage provides us with a crucial starting point for understanding the Air India tragedy, it is imperative to acknowledge its significant limitations. The video we have seen is of very low quality. It appears to have been filmed on a phone pointed at a security monitor, which introduces distortion, poor resolution, and an unsteady frame. This makes it incredibly difficult to discern fine details with any degree of certainty. We can see the general flight path of the aircraft, its struggle to gain altitude, and its low pass over the end of the runway, but finer points, like the exact position of the flight control surfaces or the state of the engines, are obscured. Drawing definitive conclusions from such footage is fraught with risk. For instance, while some have suggested the possible deployment of the ram air turbine, or RAT, this is purely speculative based on faint visual or audio cues that are easily misinterpreted in a low-resolution recording. What might look like smoke from an engine could just be heat haze or digital artifacting in the video. Without high-definition, direct source footage, every observation remains a hypothesis, not a fact. Professional accident investigators are trained to be extremely cautious with initial visual evidence, knowing that it can be misleading and can create a tunnel vision that distracts from the true cause. The definitive story of Flight AI 171 will not be told by this video. It will be told by the two most important witnesses of any aviation accident: the flight data recorder, or FDR, and the cockpit voice recorder, or CVR, commonly known as the black boxes. The FDR records thousands of parameters per second, capturing everything from the aircraft's speed, altitude, and heading to the precise position of the flaps, the landing gear, the pilot's control inputs, and the performance status of each engine. It will tell investigators exactly what the aircraft was doing and how it was configured. The CVR, meanwhile, will provide the human context. It records all conversations in the cockpit, as well as ambient sounds like engine noise and system alarms. It will allow investigators to hear the pilot's commands, their diagnostic process, and the specific warnings they may have received. Did the takeoff configuration alarm sound? Did they discuss an engine failure? Did they acknowledge the poor performance? This combination of hard data from the FDR and human context from the CVR provides a nearly complete picture of the final moments. Until that data is recovered and meticulously analyzed, everything else, including our analysis here, remains informed but preliminary. Amidst the staggering loss of life, a single story of survival has emerged from the wreckage of Flight AI 171, a poignant reminder of the human beings at the heart of this event. A British national, seated in seat 11A near a forward emergency exit, was miraculously pulled from the debris, the sole survivor among the 242 souls on board. Their experience, while fragmented, provides a powerful and personal perspective that grounds our technical analysis in human reality. To have survived an impact of such force is nearly incomprehensible, a convergence of circumstances, perhaps seat location, the way the fuselage broke apart, and sheer chance, that defied overwhelming odds. This individual's recollections, shared with authorities from their hospital bed, offer a crucial, albeit brief timeline from a passenger's perspective. They reported that the takeoff roll felt unusually long, a sensation that even an infrequent flyer might notice as abnormal. Then, approximately 30 seconds after the aircraft finally became airborne, they heard a loud noise. This detail is significant. While the source of the noise is unknown, it could be anything from an engine compressor stall to the deployment of the RAT or a structural failure. It confirms that something audibly and catastrophically went wrong in the moments after liftoff. After that sound, their memory gives way to the chaos of the impact. The human mind has a way of protecting itself from extreme trauma, and it is common for survivors of such events to have incomplete memories. The psychological and emotional recovery for this individual will be a long and arduous journey, and their privacy must be respected. Yet, their survival is not just a personal miracle, it is a testament to the complex forces at play in an aircraft crash. It underscores that survivability, even in the most severe accidents, is sometimes possible. Investigators will be keen to understand the structural environment around Seat 11A, to learn lessons that could potentially improve aircraft safety and crashworthiness in the future. This lone voice stands as a living memorial to the 241 other passengers and crew who did not survive, and to the innocent victims on the ground. It transforms the accident from a set of statistics and technical data points back into a deeply human tragedy. As we meticulously analyze flight paths and system configurations, we must never forget the people who were on that journey, their hopes, their dreams, and the families they left behind. The survivor's story ensures that the human cost of this disaster remains at the forefront of our minds, compelling us to pursue answers with unwavering dedication and empathy. In any aviation accident investigation, it is vital to look beyond the mechanics of the machine and consider the human element. The pilots of Air India Flight AI-171 were at the sharp end of this crisis, faced with a catastrophic failure at the most critical phase of flight. From the moment they realized their aircraft was not performing, they would have been operating under a level of stress that is impossible for most of us to imagine. Their world would have shrunk to the confines of the cockpit, filled with a cacophony of alarms, a flurry of emergency checklists, and the stark visual reality of the ground rushing up to meet them. These were highly trained professionals. Airline pilots spend hundreds of hours in simulators practicing for emergencies just like this: engine failures on takeoff, incorrect configurations, and severe systems malfunctions. This training is designed to build muscle memory, allowing crews to react correctly and instinctively even when startled or under immense pressure. The decision to leave the landing gear down is a clear sign that this training kicked in. They were following procedure. They were not passive victims of a technical failure. They were active participants, fighting with every ounce of their skill and knowledge to save their aircraft and their passengers. We must resist the urge to jump to conclusions about pilot error. While human factors are a part of every investigation, it is crucial to understand the context in which decisions are made. Was the cockpit environment designed in a way that could lead to a missed alarm? Was there a technical malfunction that presented the crew with confusing or contradictory information? The term pilot error is often a simplistic label for a much more complex chain of events, where systemic issues, design flaws, or unforeseen technical failures create a trap that even the most experienced crew cannot escape. The pilots are the last link in a long chain of safety. The CVR will eventually give us insight into their final moments, revealing their communication, their problem-solving process, and their professionalism in the face of an unsurvivable situation. It will likely reveal a story of two pilots working together, relying on their training and discipline until the very end. Understanding the pressures they faced, the cognitive load, the time compression, and the physiological effects of acute stress is just as important as understanding the aerodynamics of a flap setting. Honoring their memory means conducting a thorough, unbiased investigation that respects the immense challenge they confronted in those final, terrible seconds. The crash of Air India Flight AI-171 is a tragedy that has sent shockwaves through the aviation world, marking the first fatal accident for the Boeing 787 Dreamliner. The initial analysis, guided by the haunting CCTV footage and the principles of flight, has allowed us to outline a preliminary theory of the events. We see an aircraft struggling for life, unable to generate the lift or thrust required for a safe climb. We see evidence of a crew that was aware of the emergency, making deliberate procedural choices, like leaving the landing gear down in a desperate attempt to manage the crisis. The possibility of an incorrect flap configuration or a more profound systems failure, perhaps involving the engines, looms large. However, all of these points remain, for now, informed hypotheses. Aviation accident investigation is a marathon, not a sprint. It is a methodical, scientific process that relies on verifiable facts, not on grainy videos or initial impressions. The true and complete story of what happened in the cockpit and within the complex systems of that aircraft is currently locked away in the flight recorders. The dedicated investigators from India's Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau, with support from the United States NTSB and other international bodies, have the monumental task of recovering and decoding these boxes, analyzing the wreckage, and painstakingly reconstructing the chain of events that led to this disaster. It is essential that we, the public and the aviation community, give them the time and space to do their work. Speculation can be harmful, creating false narratives and causing additional pain to the families of the victims. The process will take many months, perhaps even years, but it is designed to be thorough for a reason, to provide definitive answers and to yield safety recommendations that will prevent a similar tragedy from ever happening again. This is the solemn promise of aviation safety, that every accident, no matter how devastating, must serve as a lesson to make the entire system safer for generations to come. As we wait for the facts to emerge, our thoughts must remain with those most affected, the families who have lost loved ones, the community in Ahmedabad impacted by the crash, and the sole survivor who faces a long road to recovery. Their loss is immeasurable. The best way we can honor everyone touched by this tragedy is by supporting a patient, disciplined, and transparent investigation. The truth will be found, not in the shadows of a low-resolution video, but in the meticulous analysis of data and a commitment to learning. Only then can we ensure that the legacy of Flight AI 171 is one of enhanced safety for the flying public worldwide.